In 2013, filmmaker Jeremy Saulniers took the biggest gamble of his life to make his dream film become reality.
Both liabilities to the project.
And I thought people are going to laugh me off the screen without any outside help.
We went all in. The only way through it is through it, like a storm.
This is the untold story of Blue Ruin. Jeremy Saulniers and his friend Macon Blair grew up together in Alexandria, Virginia, where they began making films at a very young age, fascinated by practical effects and the magic of camcorders and Super 8 cameras. In school they eventually found like-minded people and became a team of 6 kids who would call themselves the Lab of Madness, a suburban collective who would do class assignments and various horror short films together. Over the years they all stuck to it and eventually made their first feature film together, a low-budget horror comedy called Murder
And when
Party.
we're done, we'll rule the scene.
Happy Halloween.
Welcome to your murder.
They went on to tour multiple festivals and won big at the Slamdance Film Festival, which landed them a distribution deal with Magnolia Pictures. As they explained themselves, they thought this would open a ton of new doors and this would be their way into the industry. But they sold the movie for less than what they made it for. And with the current trajectory of DVD sales, it looked like they would break even maybe in 15 to 20 years, if even at all. So Macon and Jeremy went back to their day jobs. Jeremy working exclusively as a cinematographer for 3 years. Lots of false starts for another movie paved their way in this time. If Jeremy and Macon wanted to be seen by the industry, they concluded they needed jobs that would showcase their individual strengths. While visiting US film festivals, Jeremy noticed a void in the market. There were very few independent films that were built on traditional, quiet craft. Inspired by his idols, he got to work on writing Blue Ruin in January of 2012, setting out to do something that hasn't been seen before. After many pitches to investors, nothing happened. Nobody wanted to fund the movie. Now what? They needed $1 million to fund stunts, special effects and 80 locations. But Macon and Jeremy didn't look good on paper. With barely any box office numbers and credits to show, they quickly realized their reliability to their own production from an investor's point of view. After a few rejections, they had to make a decision. Either wait for some vague opportunity down the line or self-finance it here and now. So they went all in, albeit with a smaller budget than what they wished for. And here's where the real gamble begins. Jeremy's wife started by emptying her entire retirement account, including her kids' college tuition money. Jeremy did the same thing. Every liquid asset they had, they put into this project. Their family contributed another $25,000. They even put their house at risk and went into debt more than $100,000. If this failed, they literally had to move out of their own house. And they still needed around $35,000 to pay their crew a living wage and greenlight the production. Which is exactly where crowdfunding came in. But how would you show those potential backers a first version of what the movie could look like? Now with a budget this modest, they also had to be smart about their gear and logistics. While modern cinema packages can far exceed the entire budget, Jeremy went a different path, choosing the most practical camera and lenses he could find, the path of least resistance, something that was good enough and easy to use. They filmed the entire thing on this legendary Canon C300 Mark I. Back in the day when this thing launched in 2012, it cost you a whopping $16,000. Nowadays they're much cheaper. I got this one including 2 batteries for under $800. Which is amazing because this thing is built like a tank. Every hinge is still perfectly in shape. It has built-in ND filters. It has all of the important connections. It's a true dream for run-and-gun filmmaking. And all while it only shoots 1080p in 8-bit. But let me tell you, this sensor is not to be joked with. It was never really popular for many feature films. Digital cameras like the Arri Alexa and Red were already a thing at this time, so that was usually the obvious choice. But you might have unintentionally seen lots of footage from this camera, as it was heavily used by news outlets like the BBC or Vice when covering documentaries abroad, especially in regions of conflict and war, where a light setup and run and gun really counts. Now Jeremy bought his camera, a few L-series lenses and a 5-foot slider to record test footage. And look at this. This looks absolutely beautiful. And if Blue Ruin could make their movie look this good 14 years ago, you can probably too. Especially because it proves it's not about your camera, it's about being resourceful with what you have and knowing what you can do with the locations and natural light available. Convinced by his pitch and test shoot, 438 Kickstarter backers came in clutch and got the final shooting budget up to $160,000. The movie was greenlit, but here's where another worry came up. How would they convince a good supporting cast to join the film? That's where some tactical lying and trickery comes into play. Jeremy contacted a production company called Film Science, which he had been in contact with since 2004 and who he had DP'd 2 films for. They rebranded Jeremy as the sole DP of these 2 indie films and make him as a promising unknown with breakout potential. But still, hearing the lead actor is the best friend of the director isn't that much of a selling argument. So they took all kinds of pictures and screen grabs from their test shoot and uploaded them to Macon's IMDb, all in character for everyone to watch.
My manager had told me that role has already been given to this guy called Macon Blair. I'd never heard of before. Immediately, the 2 of us went on IMDb to see who the heck this Macon Blair guy is. I said, well, at least he looks, like the role.
Yeah, that's a homeless dude.
I fell for the Blue Ruin scam. That was a trick, yeah.
Now there was one last problem. At the same time where Blue Ruin would shoot, Film Science was simultaneously producing Kelly Reichardt's Night Moves, 2,800 miles away in Portland. Jeremy needed people within range, so after reaching out to colleagues, he was recommended a duo of Richard Peet and Tyler Byrne, from Neighborhood Watch, a production company with no prior feature film credits, who would later go on to produce movies such as The Legend of Ochi, and are even reuniting with Jeremy for his new film October. After only one coffee, the 2 dense strangers were in and had a deal on July 17, 2012. Now it was time to make a movie. When picking locations to shoot in, they once again were really smart about it, working in houses they or their families already owned, filming in their childhood neighborhood to have that home turf advantage of knowing your way around, knowing where the sun looks the best in each location. Every set piece was designed and scheduled this way. Their prop car was already one that was owned by their family too, and they just damaged it up even more to get the desired look.
As with any indie movie, a small group of people give it their everything to make something happen that's greater than the sum of its parts.
I felt really awful for Jeremy because he was so exhausted during the shoot and just, had so much pressure on him.
Jeremy himself was dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome and self-doubt at his time, but I like to read you this direct quote from him as I find it really inspiring, as it shows you don't have to be this mastermind genius who has always everything figured out and is kind of beyond human.
Our UPM and first AD Alex Orr was a scheduling mastermind. More importantly, he agreed to play bad cop on set. He cracked the whip and kept to brass tacks. A director himself, he knew when making the day wasn't as important as making the movie. That was key to our production. Everyone was a filmmaker and everyone was hurt. Carlos Valdez-Lora, or Key Grip, gave me the most insightful script notes I received. Cameron Morton, our second AD and additional stunt player, politely chimed in when he saw me making a creative choice that would later have proven to be embarrassing. We shot a version his way, and that's what made the final cut. Rommel Ganciana, our gaffer, offered me an inspired pep talk at the halfway point that brought me to tears and carried me through the production. Our camera department, headed by First AC Ryan Dickey, kept the focus sharp and their director DP on task. When moral dipped, I turned to costume designer Brooke Bennett and prop master Mike Anderson, whose unshakable positivity was a thing of wonder. And as usual, the underfunded art department, led by Kate McAnany and Brian Resepka, worked twice the hours for half the glory. At times I was their fearless leader, at others a mumbling catatonic mess.
It's reading things like these that make me really love the art form. When you're on a set working with other people to make something happen, working towards this collective goal, every other inconvenience goes out of the window, and every problem will be solved as a group. In a world that tries to isolate and separate us further and further, making a film is truly one of the last remaining activities where one feels a real sense of unity and companionship.
Jeremy knew from previous projects that he ideally needed 30 days to shoot Blue Ruin, so they didn't need to be constantly stressed on making their days. So they started with a skeleton crew for 6 days in Delaware and New York, and brought on the full 28-person crew for the remaining 24 days in Virginia. Another strategy they used to get more established actors was to have them work no longer than 5 days. By respecting the time of talents like Amy Hargreaves, Eve Plumb, or Devin Rattray, they would more likely agree to doing this more risky indie. While the controllable side of the production went perfectly as planned, American Express falsely flagged Jeremy's account and wanted $80,000 the following week, a transaction that could ruin the entire movie, but one that luckily never turned into reality.
The movie wrapped principal photography on October 14, 2012, which was followed by a very hectic post-production to get a deliverable 2-hour rough cut for the 2013 Sundance Film Festival. Now this was the decisive moment. All the risks they took, all the years that went into this project, it all boiled down to whether they would get into a festival or not.
they were rejected by Sundance. So they went back to their day jobs and saved up a little more cash, shot a hospital scene they couldn't get done during principal photography, started refinancing the house. Megan had a son in February of 2013. Jeremy had a daughter that same month, and sadly his father passed away the same month too.
Jeremy himself says about his time in hindsight, the film that meant everything to us suddenly didn't. And that was liberating.
After regrouping, they decided to pull all current submissions from festivals and give it another 4 weeks of editing to make a much more solid first cut. Their arbitrary goal was Cannes, arguably the most prestigious film festival, just to have an artificial deadline in place. On a random Tuesday on April 9, 2013, Jeremy was en route to the airport for a corporate video shoot in Cleveland as he received an email, including the acceptance letter from the director's fortnight at Cannes. They brought on Memento Films International as their sales company, did an insane post-production sprint for sound, added score, VFX and color all within 6 weeks. Investors who earlier weren't interested suddenly offered all kinds of finishing funds.
And it was our great pleasure to kindly refuse that.
I think I was just like getting out of the shower or something in the morning, and Jeremy calls me and he was like, "We got into Cannes."
To have the world premiere of the film there was surreal.
And I was coming to terms with the fact that it would never happen to me. And then all of a sudden it did. Because we didn't quite trust ourselves as individuals, but we absolutely had full faith in each other.
2 hours after its Cannes premiere, Blue Ruin was sold to Radius, and it went on to play Sundance, Toronto, Rotterdam, and dozens of other festivals.
Against all odds, Blue Ruin achieved what nobody thought to be possible, and remains to be a legendary film even in today's world because of its truthful craftsmanship. Now Jeremy would go on to direct many more films and remains active as a filmmaker to this day. And Megan got to work as an actor on some of the biggest movies of her generation. And all of it happened because two kids fell in love with the magic of firecrackers and a VHS camera.